Hello and welcome to Clown World on the 23rd of January 2026 in the Roman calendar. Today I'm joined by Paul Cox, who you might recognise from Headliners or from the fantastically named podcast he does with Nick Dixon called Dixon Cox. You're not going to get a better title than that. And today we're going to be talking about Steve Coogan saying he doesn't like Britain because of his foreign heritage. We're going to be talking about the fallout from Davos with Trump facing down Europe. And can you remember Mizzy, the young urban kid who ran around terrorising people for TikTok clicks? Well, a new Mizzy has just dropped. And he's even worse. It's not the same guy. It's a different guy. Kind of looks the same. Not being racist. Anyway, Paul. Paul, how you doing?
I'm good, Dave. It just dropped in then. I know exactly the chap you're talking about. I'm thinking, yeah, he does look similar, but why? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm fine, thanks. I'm really good. Actually, I'm better than fine. I'm great. It's Friday, which means nothing to me anymore because Friday isn't the end of my working week.
Yeah.
But I am so pleased to be here, Leo. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and we were just talking about the sort of actual economics of doing this for a living. So we're going to do for my patrons. We're going to talk about that at the end. Look behind the magician's curtain and reveal, how this business actually works, and how you transition from being because we're both transitioning. We're going to be beautiful. How you transition from having like proper jobs to being a professional ranter, professional idiot.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been an interesting week with Davos. Davos is always entertaining. But the thing that really caught my eye this week was Steve Coogan saying he didn't feel affinity, or he was ambivalent towards the British flag because I assumed Steve Coogan said this. I assumed he was going to be like, because I'm a posh English guy. I know he probably thinks he's working class, but no, Steve, you're posh now. I thought he was going to be like, yeah, because I'm one of the elites in England, and that's why I've got ambivalence. But he says it's because he's got Irish roots.
Yeah, look, it was like watching archive footage, actually, of something from maybe, and when I say archive footage, I mean like watching something from 2019. Listening to people like, by the way, let's have it right. Steve Coogan's a brilliant comedian, brilliant writer. I'm sure you appreciate his work as much as I do. But then you listen to these people, and you're like, oh, for goodness sake. Of course they've got these opinions. And I think they're preaching to a choir that's getting smaller and smaller and smaller because he trips himself up and contradicts himself all throughout it. Talking about the fact that he doesn't like Britain because he's from Ireland. Yeah. You're on our side. You're on our side, I think. You just got it all wrong, Mr. Coogan. It's Britain that we need to protect. It's not anything else. We need to protect Britain. And he is of a time where you can say stuff like that and think that it's going to be okay. But people are now not afraid to go, do you know, actually, I quite would like our country to be better again. And I think that we have allowed it to be diminished by illegal foreign exports. And that is a problem, and we don't like it.
And also, our culture has been sort of just constantly under attack. And it's usually under attack from the people who, I'd have thought Steve Coogan is like, he's one of those, Jeremy Clarkson type figureheads of British culture. The sort of seam of British humour runs through the heart of Steve Coogan. But what I'm finding now, he used to be this guy who's like a smart, switched on guy who did these horrible characters that you sort of love to hate. And now I like his characters more than I like Steve Coogan. It's the other way around.
Yeah, do you know what I think? I think he's trying to preach to a very small choir, and that choir is, bosses at the BBC as well. He's doing lots of character dramas where he's playing serious roles for the BBC.
Yeah. Jimmy Savile,
etc. Yeah, Savile, etc. And those are big paydays. Alan Partridge rumbles on, which is great to see. It's kind of in its dying embers, but it's great. It's great that he's able to do it. He can't do that without the BBC. He knows what he's doing. I think privately, deep down, he doesn't believe half the things that he says. I'd like to think so. Maybe that's just my rose tinted. Maybe he's absolutely indoctrinated and he's part of the problem. But I think because I like his comedy writing so much, I like to think that maybe all he's doing is grifting to protect his career, which is a great career. But honestly, I'll go back to what I was saying. It was like watching archive footage. Because people don't talk that way anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just in this ex-bubble where you and I, Nick Dixon, Simon Evans, and a bunch of our other hard right people are just there ranting. But honestly, I can't believe anyone thinks the way that Steve Coogan spoke.
But I think that our WhatsApp group that we have with those gentlemen is, we might think that's representative of just the average population. I don't think it's the average person working in the media. Like, I know from talking to, what's interesting is talking to some of the people. I've got friends in the music industry, in the sort of creative and charity sectors, and they say that they have to present such a sort of image because their business would just like be demolished overnight. They've got to be super careful about what they say on Twitter. What they do. Like before, they couldn't even like tweets, and because they'd be called out. And yeah, so maybe it is just grifting. But I also think that Steve Coogan's at the level where he's got FU money. He's like J.K. Rowling. He's done Hollywood and everything. So I genuinely think he believes it. And I genuinely think a lot of people get suckered in by this sort of leftist idealism, this utopianism, because they've got they're insulated from any of the negative impacts. Like if people come across the border, if they're dumped in army barracks or whatever in Crowborough, it's not affecting Steve Coogan. Like, no. It's actually interesting that Crowborough is one of the places where they're getting a big illegal migrant camp because that's quite a posh part of England. And, up until now, it's been city centres, it's been, hotels in sort of run-down towns, by and large. And, so people could be, Emma Thompson could stand on her yacht and be like, of course we should welcome them into other people's neighbourhoods. We should welcome them into the poor neighbourhoods. I welcome, like Lord Farquaad saying, like thousands of you may die, but that's a risk I'm willing to take. It's the burden falls on someone else, and the rich insulated person gets all the luxury of wallowing in this glorious belief, this virtue to present to everybody.
Yeah, look, going back slightly, I've got a friend who is a legitimate journalist. She's a filmmaker. She relies on the liberal left bubble and machine to get paid, and she enjoys nothing more than speaking to me about her real opinions. It's like confession. It's like I sit behind a grate and she just tells me what she really thinks. And she would never, I would never mention her name here. I would, she has a family to support and a career to maintain.
Yeah.
But there are lots. That's why I sort of look at some of these people. But you're right. Steve Coogan does have FU money, and he could quite easily just come out and say what he thinks. And maybe I'm much mistaken, and he does think that. But with regards to Crowborough, yeah, absolutely. I live near Portsmouth in Hampshire, and just down the road is a place called Gosport. It's not pretty at all. People know it as a pretty bad area. It's a go-to place.
I'm performing there on my tour.
Are you?
It's funny if you go to places like that. It's where I can sell tickets.
Well, it's exactly. And God bless them. Exactly that.
Yeah.
But they've got Hasler's in Gosport, which is an old military base, military hospital. It's no longer a hospital. It's just sitting there quiescent, doing nothing. But they're talking about putting a migrant camp in there. In fact, many moons ago, they used to have a migrant camp there. It used to just be an immigration holding point when immigration was real, and the immigration officers could say, "Oh, you plead asylum, do you? I don't think so, mate. Get in Hasler." And then they'd be engineered back.
Or we'd have people like, genuinely coming. Like, these immigration laws, these asylum laws were developed like in the wake of World War II to deal with, people come from Europe, like Europeans. Like, they weren't written with the idea that what if people from the Horn of Africa exploit this system? So, there's a big difference.
The system's now designed to help them into the country and keep them in the country. It's very deliberate. I have personal experience of this. My father-in-law was an immigration officer. He's 80 years old now. He's not. He's no longer working. But him and his colleagues, who I've met a few, they're all sort of, they all still hang out together, and they'll often come to my comedy clubs. And they were all qualified. They all spoke 3 or 4 different languages. They all understood geopolitics. They all could tell if someone came in from a certain place, they could instantly ascertain whether they were were trying to mug the country off or not, because they knew the sort of people that were coming into work, and they knew the sort of people who weren't, and they knew that based on their political prejudices. Exactly, but they were qualified to make that prejudice. And
absolutely, man. Like when I say that, I'm not saying it like a bad thing. It's like one of the things that I can't like when what's his face, the guy who came in from Egypt and was welcomed in by Starmer and stuff. Abdel Fattah. I could tell straight away that he was a wrong-un just from looking at him, just through prejudice. You know what I mean? And it's amazing. It might not be, it might not be right, but it's always correct.
Yeah, well, exactly. And these guys would plead asylum. That now, if you plead asylum, you're instantly into the system, and you're never going home.
Yeah,
you're never going home.
Yeah, which is a huge carrot, a huge incentive for people to come, because they know, like, once they get here, that's it, they're here.
Whereas my father-in-law and his colleagues, pleading asylum didn't. So what? Let me have a little look at this. What are you coming here for? And they'd analyse their bank accounts. They'd analyse their travel history. They go, well, last time you went somewhere, you never went home for 6 years. What are you planning to do here? And all this sort of stuff. And they'd go, I don't think so, mate. And they'd been making the decision at that point, and they'd send them into a place just to be, and it might take 3 or 4 weeks, but they'd basically be on a conveyor belt back out of the country, and they'd have to try and come back with a different excuse at a later point. And it worked. That's why we had immigration at the levels it did. That's why we never knew that Hasler had an immigration camp. That's why Krober was never needed. That's why no hotel was ever used. Because now it's like a pre-asylum. Oh, okay, no worries. And they're no longer called immigration officers. I think they work for I think it's like UK Border Force, and they're basically completely underqualified. These people used to have degrees. They used to have proper education. They have to speak different languages, and they'd often be sent to other countries as well. My father-in-law and his colleagues went and worked in Africa or Pakistan and places like that. They got to see what the problems were. They got to identify. By the way, the class system, they knew that if you were coming from a certain country, no matter how bad we perceive it, that you were probably only coming to the UK if you're at the lower order of the demographic. They knew that they could go, oh, you come from what village? Oh, that village. There's no way you're coming into this country, because we know there's only about 2 families in that village, and you've been effing each other for centuries, and we don't want you here. There's nothing for you here. You can't work here. You've got no qualifications. You add no value to the country, and they'd be on their way back. That now is considered prejudiced, racist, even bigoted, probably. And by the way, that's exactly what we need to be. We've sort of made all these things taboo, and we're like, no, what do you want? But there is a reason that we've developed beyond that point.
We've criminalised your most valuable instincts.
Exactly. And we know that. I mean, I watched a video this morning of a guy just walking around Birmingham, and there is detritus and crap all over the park, just everywhere. And the Welsh, you might have seen this too, and I'm sure your viewers and listeners have, the Welsh mountains that are covered in crap. This has only happened in the last few years. You didn't go to the Welsh valleys or the Welsh mountains on a hike and find crap. Everybody respected it. Everybody valued it. The locals did. The visitors did. Now, all of a sudden, we're supposed to think that all of a sudden the Welsh culture, the British culture has changed. It hasn't changed. It's just been infested.
It's almost as if when people come here, when they step onto British soil, they don't suddenly become imbued with a great desire to be a custodian of the land and hand it down to their children, like people have done for millennia in the UK. I mean, maybe some of them do. I know some people who come here and they're they've got more patriotism, more pride in this country than anyone else. But if you let anybody come in, you're bringing in, and you're ruining it for the people who come and do contribute. And it's interesting. It comes back to this point with Steve Coogan, because Steve Coogan said he felt antipathy towards the British flag because of his Irish heritage, and I don't even think like both his parents are Irish. Maybe they are. I don't know. I mean, but he's not like Morrissey, who's like Irish blood, English heart. He's not like. I mean, obviously I've got Irish family, and they don't even see much of a distinction between Ireland and Britain. They see it as one unit, a very similar culture. It's like the difference between Wales and England, or Scotland and England. But Steve Coogan, by saying that he has antipathy towards the British flag because he's got foreign roots, is actually making the case that a lot of blood and soil nationalists, Steve Laws, people like that, say that if you've got foreign heritage, you're never going to be truly British. And Steve Coogan is there saying, like, I've got foreign heritage and I'm not truly British. He's making the point. He's making the sort of ethno-nationalist point for them. It's such a sort of obviously dumb thing to do if he really supports mass immigration.
This is why I struggle with this, because he's a clever guy and I can't believe that irony's lost on him. When he's saying something, maybe, look, we've all been asked questions and given answers and maybe thought afterwards that probably wasn't my point of view. I just went with the flow of the time. I don't know. I don't want to defend Steve Coogan here, by the way. And with regards to Scotland and Ireland, I've got a Scottish family, I haven't got any Irish family. And the more this immigration scandal continues, the closer we get. It's ironic how it's brought us all together. What's happening from people I know who live in Ireland is they have the same problems, so they relate to our problems. Scotland, a bit less so. I know people who live in the posh parts of Edinburgh, and they don't have the immigration issue in the same way as they do in Glasgow or down in London or whatever. But what they're doing is they're watching what's going on and think, we don't want this here. So
right.
we are, we're... And they've got the SNP, who would absolutely love it. The only reason that the immigrants haven't made it up there yet is because it's too far away. As soon as they get to, they get to Blackburn or whatever, Rotherham, and there's plenty of things to be getting on there, gangs to join, children to exploit. So they don't quite make their way up on their jolly. No, they end up staying in those places. But one day they will. I've also got a friend who lives in Lithuania, and her point is that Lithuania is this great country. And I actually agree, by the way. The more I learn about Lithuania, I'm like, yes, it's because you are 2 million, 3 million strong. Your health system works because you're not got this influx. But I can see their LRT, it's called, which is their equivalent to the BBC. I can see them trying to indoctrinate the country. And she gets quite annoyed with me because I say, this language, you're heading our way. We'd never go this way. I said, you're heading our way. We'd never go this way. We know what oppression looks like. We fought off Russia. Actually form a lot of my views. People actually don't like my views on Russia. I think Russia's evil. I think Putin's evil. I think they're a threat. I support Ukraine. I know you do too, Leo. But and I know you also.
I think Russia. I've got Russian mates and stuff, and I like Russia as a country. I like the culture, the heritage and stuff. Apart from the communist stuff, and Putin, I think, has been an absolute disaster. I think when dictators are in power, they do great for like maybe 10 years. Then they do okay, and then they start believing their own PR, and they get old and tired and stagnant. And this is the strength of a democracy, or at least some sort of system that can replace the leader, like the Communist Party in China. It's not a democracy, but they can have turnover of leaders and stuff. Like in Russia, it's just stagnated, and he's got that sort of 25 year curse of the dictator, where he's like gets full of hubris, thinks about his legacy, and he's really sort of screwed it up with Ukraine. Still an incredibly smart operator, like the way he's, especially with Trump, and I can understand why Trump has some sympathy, or has lets Putin have his ear, because you got to remember how the Democrats and the whole Western media tried to stitch Trump up with lies, with Russiagate, with an absolute concoction. So that's obviously going to make bedfellows of the conspirators, or the supposed conspirators. But yeah, man, Putin just like absolutely screwing Russia, absolutely like just going through their foreign reserves, going through everything that they've spent decades building up their economy. They've really run out of road. And obviously the war in Ukraine is absolutely horrific and so unnecessary.
The reason I mentioned the Baltic states, I agree with all that, by the way. The reason I mentioned the Baltic states, which are Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia, is they were all occupied at one point. They were never communist. They were just under the Soviet Union, and they were the first to break free. I think Lithuania was the first to break free, and that was in about 1990, 1991. And I've got to understand about the culture there. And the culture there is like 95, 96, 97% incumbent culture. They happen to be white. And they've got very little immigration in the same way that we have. And their immigration is largely Russia, or from Latvia, or from Poland, or from Estonia. So it's not the same problem. And they've got plenty of land and not a lot of people. They're tech rich. A lot of the big tech, like Nord is a Lithuanian company.
I did an advert for them.
Yeah, right. Okay. So, and they've made that, but they're starting to embrace. I was saying to her, they're starting to embrace some of the multiculturalism ideas of the countries further west. And she said, well, what's the problem? And I showed her, and she's like, well, that couldn't happen to us. We just don't have the culture to allow it. And I'm like, what do you think? I mean, and she hates it when I say this, but I said the British culture was filled with the same Britons that basically ruled the world and built the biggest empire that's ever been seen. I'm not saying that Lithuania's weak, but by comparison, you know, we're a very high standing, and it happened to us. Just look around our major cities now. We're unrecognisable, and these things will happen. And like I came to this slowly as well. It's only since probably Brexit. Before that, I voted Labour. I just started to watch the reaction to Brexit, and it made me look deeper and deeper and deeper. And I'm now at the point now where I'm friends with Leo Kearse. So I've totally gone the other way.
Yeah, and it's funny with Brexit. You know, Brexit was obviously, you know, a pretty strong signal from the electorate that, like, you know, like we don't want mass immigration. And the mass immigration at that time was coming from like Poland, Romania, and stuff like that. It's like, oh man, what I'd give to have those glorious days back of mass immigration from Poland. It's like, because Brexit, you know, and Boris, man, what a traitor. Boris comes out, he's like, yeah, we're going to take back control of our borders. And then uses Brexit to suddenly, he stopped, you know, he slowed down immigration from Poland and stuff. Open the borders to, like, you know, the Horn of Africa, Afghanistan, all these places with deeply, radically different culture, and not cherry picking the best people, just absolute slop. Just like I really don't understand why a right-wing politician would do that. Would gerrymander the electorate against themselves, unless it's just incompetence, unless it's just, you know, the blob actually controls everything and Boris is just this buffoonish figurehead at the top. But yeah, man, that absolutely destroyed my faith, and that's why I'm worried. You know, if we stop. Like, if we vote reform and stop immigration from, like, the Horn of Africa and places, does that mean they're going to start importing aliens from the planet, you know...
Mong.
Yeah. And they're gonna have laser beam eyes. Like, things are actually going to get worse.
Exactly.
Like, grooming gangs with, like, you know, death rays.
Look, I've spoken about this on my channel a few times. There's always the argument of stupidity versus malevolence. And the more you look into it, the more you realise that people like Boris Johnson aren't stupid, so therefore it is malevolent. Boris Johnson was never a conviction politician when it came to Brexit. He made his mind up when David Cameron made his mind up. You go back to like 2014, 2015, they were both competing at the top of the Tory party. David Cameron come out and said, that he wants to stay in. So Boris Johnson just did the opposite. I think at that time he'd written 2 articles in that same year, one pro and one anti-Brexit. So he was never ideologically on board with Brexit. So therefore, he bought into all the horse crap about what Brexit would mean. So all the things that were anti his argument at the time as the pro-Brexit leader, he essentially believed it. So then when Brexit happened, he opened the doors because he thought the economy was going to collapse. It wouldn't have done. He just had to let it sit. And that's because he didn't believe. If we'd had someone like Nigel Farage or Rupert Lowe or someone who really believed, I mean, obviously those people weren't able to do that at that time.
Yeah.
And particularly Rupert Lowe, he was chairman of Southampton at that point, which was a big problem for me. I now like Rupert Lowe, but that was unforgivable. But I would say that nobody ever believed enough in Brexit to deliver it. And had they done, we'd see a very different landscape now. And it's probably going to be too late. By the time Reform get into government, it's probably going to be too late to reverse ferret a lot of the stuff. Because as we stand, the Labour Party are writing legislation that ties us to the EU forever. So what you've got to do is basically set fire.
That's impossible. Like, we've got. I know we don't have a proper constitution, but there's like some sort of constitutional rules. Well, it's a basic sort of democratic rule that a government can't write legislation for a following government to follow. Like, you can't force the government after you to do these things. So, you know, it could be overturned. And I think we're sort of we're getting close to the point where actual democracy, like, just like what happens in Parliament is going to stop mattering. We can already see people having to take things into their own hands. We've seen this with, you know, the protests against asylum hotels. You know, Ballymena, when they burnt out the homes, you know, the problem families. You know, horrible stuff. But, you know, these are people who tried to resolve it democratically by engaging with politicians and stuff. In Crowborough this week, they're setting up resident patrols to patrol the town. and make sure it's safe from migrants. That's something like that sort of thing is always in Britain, or not always, but for the last 100, 200 years has come under the jurisdiction of the government. We've had a police force that polices with consent. Yeah. Now the police aren't policing. The police can't police because we've brought in who knows who and dumped hundreds of them on a camp right next to this town. So if you're I've got a daughter. If I was there, I'd be joining that patrol. You know what I mean? I'd be opening a stand selling pitchforks.
Yeah, I'm from Waterlooville, and Waterlooville, most people won't know where Waterlooville is. It's in Hampshire, about 15, 20 miles north of Portsmouth. But the reason some people might know Waterlooville is because Suella Braverman stopped an immigration hotel coming to Waterlooville. Now, the town centre in Waterlooville is very downtrodden. The demographic in and around that area is lower working class. And I think that local councils thought they could take advantage of that. That's often the case, by the way. They think they're not going to get... A lot of people in those demographics are relying on the government to keep them going, essentially, for handouts. So therefore, they don't put up too much of an argument when these things come into place. But I have a 16-year-old daughter who's doing her A-levels, and the idea of having, as it would have been at the time, and Suella Braverman did a good job of stopping it getting in, hundreds of let's say the cliche, fighting age, men from God knows where, just wandering around the town. Now my daughter doesn't go into town, really. She does occasionally wander up there, maybe go to the library or something, but there's not a lot for her there. But the idea that they would all be there within a mile or two of my house, for me, really brought... I was already on the side of being against it, but the idea that it would be there... I was fully in support of all the process of that, and it does take local reaction. Now, I talked about them being lower demographic, lower working class people. It's those people, actually, that are willing not to be scared of being called racist or bigoted. So it's actually quite easy for them to coalesce around the argument, get Suella Braverman on board and say, absolutely not here, mate. But
they're the people with the balls to actually, do something about it. And, obviously, you can't condone the methods all the time, but you also can't call it, mindless or, motivated by racism or whatever. This is, these are people who've really been left on the scrap heap by society, the liberalisation of society from the 60s, the 50s, 60s onwards. Obviously, it's great for the economy overall. It's great for people who succeed, who move away from these places, go to London, use the grammar school system or whatever. But it strips away a lot of the support structures that would protect those, like the vulnerable girls in Rotherham or whatever. So vulnerable people. And also people who, really should be succeeding, but their jobs are gone. They're having to compete with people who are coming in who work for, half what they'll work for. Because how are you supposed to compete with a guy who's going to sleep, 5 to a room in a bed sit somewhere when you've got to pay a mortgage, pay for a car to be kept on the road, pay for to feed and clothe 3 kids or whatever. Like a guy doing that can't compete with migrants coming in and doing it for pennies. And that's I think when people talk about in the media, I hear people talk about depressed working class communities or whatever. It's like they're not lazy and they're not choosing to be on welfare. A lot of times it's just the jobs that they would be doing have gone. And now that Britain's just a sort of service economy country, we've screwed that generation of men and women.
Yeah, so many good points there. First thing says, in Waterlooville, there was no violence whatsoever. There was 1 or 2 minor scuffles, and that was only when, and even in Waterlooville, which is a no-name town and a no-name area, I mean, I love it to death, it's where I grew up, but they had shipped in a couple of sort of purple-haired, face mask-wearing numpties to say that everybody was racist, and a couple of local lads got a little bit upset about that, and there was, some shouting and stuff that I saw. I never went up there at the time. And
they always...
And it was a little bit... But it stayed
those
peaceful.
Ones, they always have the sort of the obviously manufactured signs that are printed somewhere. Yeah. It's like they're not handwritten on cardboard. Like you can see the genuine protesters, the ones protesting against the migrant hotels. It's all written on cardboard. It's like felt tips and stuff. And then you got these people coming in. All their placards are manufactured and identical. It's like, where are they coming from? Who's paying for that?
And on the opposite side, it's all mums as well. What I noticed more often, not like the pink ladies at Epping, It's the mums. These are fulfilling their role as the protectors in many ways, while the dads are going out to work. Nuclear family stuff. And look, you're absolutely right. These people would work. Waterlooville is a town centre that was really been on its arse. Absolutely been on its arse. And in the last couple of years, the council's really invested, and it's gradually coming up. And as it was gradually coming up, that was when they were converting the old buildings into accommodation. They were going to give that accommodation to the asylum seekers, to the illegals.
Yeah.
And it would have just brought it all back down again. And by the way, this is a town that is proving very difficult to get off the ground, but has still managed to have 5 or 6 Turkish barbers.
Yeah.
I've no idea. With a Ferrari parked outside, you're like, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
No one's ever been in there.
Man, the thing that pisses me off about those Turkish barbers is like, they're using it to launder money through the drug trade. But you go in, it's still 25 quid for a haircut. It's like, surely I paid for this haircut when I bought my heroin. Do I not? Like with the heroin dealers.
Why didn't I get?
You should get a voucher. You should get a voucher for a free haircut, free nails done in your nail salon when you buy your crack. You know what I mean?
By the way, I did use one of them once. He gave me a Kim Jong-un. I never asked for it, but it just went very brutal.
There's also, man, another video that went viral this week was this guy who I've compared to Mizzy. It's a young black kid who's going around with sort of face covering on that became popular during COVID. I don't think the COVID maestros realised what they were creating when they encouraged everyone to cover their faces in public and made it socially acceptable. Because now all the kids run around with these face coverings on so you can't see them. But yeah, this black kid is following women and he's like helping women get home safe at night, and he chases after them, obviously scares the wits out of them.
Yeah, it's very sinister. There are 2 types of people who wear masks now, isn't it? It's the purple-haired monks and which you don't need to be scared of whatsoever. They're just cowering in the corner scared of someone coughing.
You should be scared because they've got the vote.
Yeah, okay, yeah, they do actually. In fact, they're in charge. No, they've just got the vote. At the moment, they're in charge. The purple-haired Mong is Keir Starmer personified. That's all that is. And then the other type is these criminal types of all different backgrounds, but usually foreign backgrounds. But it's terrifying. And at first, I was like, Is this just a prank video? But there's the harder you look, the more of it there is, and you're like, this guy is literally walking up to women at night, and his idea of having them home is scaring the living bejeebies out of them and chasing them through a quiet street.
Yeah,
and it's getting traction. People are watching this stuff, and it's like we should be eradicating that immediately.
And it's interesting that Keir Starmer and all the other lefties who came out and said, it's absolutely despicable that Grok AI is being used to put bikinis on women or whatever. Like, they're not coming out and saying that's absolutely despicable that this young man is chasing women in the street. And that, if they ever make a Netflix drama about him, he's going to be a white kid.
Oh, yeah, called like Rupert.
Yeah. He was radicalised by
really well-maintained home.
Yeah,
father and mother there.
Yeah,
dad with a good middle-class job, mum just enjoying Pilates. And
His problem was that he listened to Paul Cox and Leo Kearse on the internet, and we need to ban them.
Yeah, it would be a worry if it is 13-year-olds listening to us. But, you're welcome, boys. You're welcome. Thank you for interrupting your wanking to join us. But look, this stuff is really sinister and really dark, by the way. This is a genuine problem. This is on the back of sort of men trying to defend their space and say, look, we will cross the road. We'll do everything you need to make you feel safe. We're not bad, by the way, but we get it. And then all of a sudden, these little oiks come along and they're chasing him down the high street. It's ruined any chance. And nobody's ever going to point out what the problem is in that, by the way. No one's ever going to go, well, it kind of looks like it's these type of people doing that. They're never going to say it because the women that are scared believe that their saviours are the purple-haired mongs.
Oh, and man. You know for a fact that the women that he's chasing, I'm totally basing this on prejudice, that amazing tool that I've got, that amazing skill I've developed. But you know for a fact that like 95% of those women getting chased are then gonna, the next week they'll walk into a polling booth and they'll be like, where's the most open borders, lax on crime, left-wing party I can vote for? And they'll vote for it. And then, the next week they'll get chased again and they'll be posting on Instagram. It's like, oh, Britain's streets aren't safe.
Yeah, and they'll base it on the fact that the statistics, which by the way are devoid of any per capita reasoning, will say that, well, it's 80% white men that do this,
Yeah,
but
I
per
love it. I
capita.
love it when they do that. When Narinder Kaur or somebody pulls up the stats and they're like, "Well, actually, if you look at this, it says that people from Eritrea commit far less crime in Britain than people from Britain." And it's like, yeah. What
What
we
it doesn't
experiencing,
tell
Narinder?
you is that over 100% of Eritreans are committing crimes. It doesn't bring only 3% of Eritreans. There's only 2% in the country. It's like they don't. I don't know if you ever went to this, but I won't say where it is, just because I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to out or dox it in any way. But GB News used to have a summer barbecue or summer get together in a place that was essentially a sports place.
Yeah.
And one year I went along to this, and it coincided with the Eritrean football competition that just basically every Eritrean in London was playing at. And it looked like GB News had their summer barbecue at an asylum sneaker camp. It was unbelievable. It was
It even
genuinely
had
unbelievable.
the big metal cages. It was more
They
secure,
were.
for the football. So it was more. It looked more secure than an asylum seeker camp.
We're all there with wives and girlfriends and children trying to have a night time in our, in our white paradise, talking about asylum sneakers, and they're all on the other side of the fence, just angry and rapey.
No, to my Eritrean followers, I abhor those comments. And
I'm just being satirical, obviously. Only 50% of them statistically were rapey.
But yeah, it was almost like we'd chosen it deliberately to make some sort of point.
Yeah. I'm sure they're all lovely, by the way.
Yeah, but yeah, man.
Yeah,
I love it when people like disabuse. But there's that great quote by someone on Twitter who said, and I love that the quote will just be like someone on Twitter. But they said that it's impossible to sort of have a meaningful debate with left wing people because they willfully choose to they choose to be thick. But I don't know if they are true. I think a lot of left wing people, I've spent a lot of time on Reddit, and I think a lot of left wing people are genuinely quite thick.
Well, yeah, well, that's true. But this has been the great trick that's been committed by the WF types, the New World Order types, where they needed to encourage multiculturalism in order to achieve their dastardly plan of getting people, open borders. And in doing so, they appealed to the people through kindness and said, well, of course, if you agree with us, that makes you a good person. And you've got lots of sort of gullible lambs waiting to be slaughtered going, oh, yeah, I want to be considered that. And at some point in my life, I must have been one of those people going, yeah, well, I just want to be considered that too. And then when you say it openly, I want to be kind and I want them to be kind, and everyone goes, yes, I want that too. And then all of a sudden people come along and they disrupt that, and they go, well, hang on a minute, we've noticed. Have you noticed? This is what we've noticed. And for a while, everybody gets, oh, no, look, we're the kind people there. Look at what Leo's saying on Twitter.
Yeah, stop noticing. Yeah. That's bad.
And for a long time, and by the way, you fought this fight a lot longer than I have, and congratulations, mate. For a long time, you had to put up with being cancelled, and you're still being cancelled. Let's face it, you're still being cancelled. And you have to put up with that. But now that you can feel that the dial's been turned slightly, enough has happened, and you've got your GB News, you've got your independent media outlets, YouTube channelists, you've got all these people who are going, look, we have noticed. And here, by the way, here's the evidence. Just have a look for yourself. We don't want to indoctrinate you. We just want you to have a look at what we've noticed and let us know what you think.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened now. Unfortunately, it's coinciding with the fact that whilst that dial's turning, the equilibrium on the other side of the argument has gone completely the other way. We've got the illegal immigration through the roof. We've got the legal immigration through the roof. The people that enabled it, the stupid people, are all looking around going, no, well, we don't know what to say now because we can't possibly point out that was wrong. But our argument's starting to. I don't know how it justifies itself, how it rights itself. And we talked a little bit earlier about Parliament and what that means. I think we can overturn a lot of things because, you're not held by the previous government. But what makes laws and legislation is the Lords. And what I'm hearing anecdotally, because we know people in the Lords now, we've actually risen to a point where we know people in the Lords. Mental. And you talk to them and they're like, we are fighting the fight in the Lords now because people who are on the liberal side of the Lords, which are many, by the way.
Oh, yeah, we've had 25 years of liberal people just
exactly.
being, piling up in the Lords.
They're secretly in the background putting in legislation which would stop someone like Nigel Farage enacting any of the policies he would want to.
Yeah. I think when Farage gets in, it's got to be, a sort of a blitzkrieg. Maybe blitzkrieg is the wrong word to use given the context, but, it's got to be like when Trump got in. When Trump got in, there was just all these executive orders, and he was just like, bah, 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 bah. And he was like, what's this one? What's this one? And they're telling him, and it's like, there was so much. It was such a barrage. They couldn't, the deluge was so great that the Democrats couldn't stem it. They could maybe take some and try and overturn them in courts, but there was just too much for them to deal with. And, for the Democrats being disorganized and lacking a lot of the sort of motivation to actually do it, and, with the process in the courts taking so long, by the time, even if stuff does get overturned, it's 6 months down the line and it's happened. So I think, reform have got to come in with something like that. And it's sort of, because we're at the point, I think reform is kind of like, the next election is going to be Britain's last go at resolving its issues peacefully and democratically. And I think if reform don't grasp that opportunity, then, and I've got, I think I'm feeling quite positive that they will. But if they don't, then there's going to be, man, we're at the point where all it's going to take is an economic downturn, and we've got the situation of the sort of Weimar Republic. We've got social degradation. We've got the sort of a lot of the sort of corruption of society and children. With all the trans stuff. We've got a lot of that stuff. We've got a lot of resentment. But I mean, imagine how much more rapid and how much more like Hitler's rise to power would have been if there had been grooming gangs. You know what I mean? This is what people don't realize. There's so much sort of anger and resentment's the wrong word. It's more than that. It's a real justified anger about this, and I really think the politicians, the people at the top, have to deal with this because it's gonna escalate beyond the point of containment if they don't deal with it.
That's an interesting paradigm to use because Rupert Lowe's self-funded, crowd-funded inquest into the Pakistani rape gangs starts next week. And he tweeted yesterday saying there's going to be a lot of things in there that people are going to be shocked by. At first, people are going to go, well, this is Rupert Lowe's boys. And of course they're saying this. But I think it's going to become insurmountable and the evidence is going to be so strong that people are going to get on board. And I think once normies start to see what that really entailed and how many people looked away, I think that will turn the dial again. And by the way, talking about if at this point you're still listening to Leo and I and you're not convinced, if you look at what Donald Trump did, and particularly with ICE, the guy who leads ICE, I forget his first name, Homan's his surname.
Tom Homan.
Tom Homan. He was given an award right back in 2012, 2013 for essentially removing 925,000 people under Obama. An award. Yeah. Right. Under Trump, they've removed 290.
Yeah.
It's a percent of a percent.
I guess the difference is that, under Obama, that the people removed were actually people turned away at the border. So there wasn't this sort of disruption. So, Trump is going in. The thing is, like, Trump, most of the time, ICE are going in, they're targeting people. They're genuinely sort of leaving a lot of construction sites alone. They might get the odd Mexican restaurant. There's a funny story about ICE having a meal in a Mexican restaurant and then deporting the people in the kitchen
afterwards.
And it's like, so now Mexican restaurants, they've got to be cooking the fajitas really bad. So when ICE are sitting down to lunch, they're like, no, this food was cooked by an Irish guy. This food was cooked by somebody with Northern European heritage. But because Trump's going in and sort of rooting out people in communities, it's more visible and it's more, I guess, socially disruptive. I've seen it myself in Glasgow, like round the corner from my mum's. there was these guys. Where are they from? They might have been from Bangladesh or somewhere. They were working illegally in a restaurant or something, and the Home Office did a morning raid on them, and the whole sort of neighbourhood came out to defend all this sort of, well, I say the whole neighbourhood, all the sort of student-y types came out to defend them, to sit in front of the van, to put their bikes in front of the van, and they just stayed there all day to stop the van taking them. And then eventually, Anas Sarwar, who's I think he's the leader of Scottish Labour, yeah.
Labour leader, isn't he?
Yeah. I don't know if he was then, but he's a lawyer.
His dad was a politician as well.
Yeah.
He said even more radical nonsense.
Oh man, yeah, and it's crazy that Scotland allows people with such radical ideas to do it. But yeah, he led them to a mosque, a local mosque, and all the locals are like cheering, like, "Way, oh, we did it! We stopped these Bangladeshi." And it's like, man, you've got the luxury of doing that because you don't have that many of them yet. You know what I mean? Like, wait until you've got a sizable number, and wait until some of the crimes that they're committing are coming to the fore. Because I know, anecdotally from speaking to mates in Glasgow, they do have an issue with, maybe not the level of organisation of grooming gangs that there were in other parts of Britain. There's an issue with grooming gangs. There's also an issue with just like the sort of sectarian rivalry and the violence that quite often gets covered up. Like it was Chris Donald, the famous case. This kid who was really horribly tortured and killed by ethnic minorities. I think it was Pakistanis in Glasgow, and that all gets it appears page 6 of the paper and all gets sort of swept under the cover. Whereas if it's Stephen Lawrence or something, it's like, whoa, we've got to change the whole way everything's done and revolutionise our public services over this. One thing though, I think this going to happen is, you've spoken about how lefties are the sort of kind people. They can say, oh, we're kind, we're tolerant, we've got the moral high ground. I think morality is a contextual thing, and I think it's malleable and it changes. And we can see now, with what you were saying earlier about the pink ladies, the mums getting involved. The morally correct thing is changing. The morally correct thing used to be, oh, let these poor lambs into the country, we'll care for them. Now the morally correct thing is, let's protect our children. And I think the let's protect our children is a much more emotive, a much more real world stance to take, so it's resonating with more people. And the idea that we should let people into the country, that sort of looks good on Facebook. Nobody really sort of believes it in real life. So I think the moral high ground is going to be captured by the right. It's going to be captured by me and you.
Yes, I think that's really interesting. I used to think this sort of moral high ground was a luxurious commodity that really was just for first world countries, because once you've got everything in order, of course you can have morals, because at that point everything's in order, and then you can go, well, this is the moral thing to do. But what's happened is we've gone completely the other way. But what is really interesting, and I'm glad you point this out, is that morality is changing. The perception of what is moral now is changing, because yes, when immigration was very, very low, it didn't feature on most of our radars because it wasn't causing societal problems. And we were like, well, we don't like it, but it's okay. It's not the end of the world. There's other stuff to worry about. It's flipped over, and it's a huge issue, and it has changed the moral perception. People are going, well, hang on a minute, what do we value more, women and children, or these poor lambs that need rescuing? It turns out it's women and children, because these poor lambs are all 18 to 35, randy buggers who don't appreciate women in the same way we do.
Yeah,
just wandering around the park looking for sex.
It's like people, all these lefties are like, I actually feel more threatened by white guys than I'd rather be alone with an illegal migrant than with a. And it's like, man, well, that's the point we're making. Like, Britain is already tough enough for women with guys like Paul Cox here.
Exactly. There's no room for me anymore. I'm down the park on a Friday. I'm waiting for vulnerable women to come past, and there's 6 or 7 abdals in front of me. I can't get a look in.
They're taking your job.
And they're scared of me. The women are scared of me. Like, look at the white blood. I said, there's 18 brown fellas here. You should be scared of them. And they're like, no, it's you to worry about, mate. Look, you were just reminding me of a story, actually. You're talking about the Mexican restaurant. I remember about 25 years ago, I was saying, my father-in-law was an immigration officer. He was working then. And my mate, I won't say his name actually, but my mate was in an Indian restaurant. He'd had a few beers. He'd gone to a restaurant to collect his takeaway. He'd bought and paid for his takeaway. And once they'd taken the money, immigration stormed in, raided the restaurant, took all the staff away, and he never got his food. Instead of just going home, he rang me up ranting. Coxie, your father-in-law's just turned up at my local Indian. I'm not even having dinner now, mate. What are you going to do about it? I'm like, I'm going to do nothing, mate. That was the extent of the problem in 2003. Yeah. But now, now that's not happening. They're not raiding Indian restaurants anymore. In fact, we welcome them. Like we were talking earlier about the Polish plumbers. Please come back.
Yeah.
Please come back. You were cheap. You worked hard. It was great.
You were culturally similar. Yeah, the superb level. Maybe this is all. Maybe the Boris wave is just to teach us how lucky we were to have, open borders in Europe. And it's kind of destroying the European dream. Talking of the European dream, so we've had Davos this week, and Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor of Germany, says Europe has suffered from over-regulation.
We are aware of those problems. Both Germany and Europe have wasted incredible potential for growth in recent years by dragging feet on reforms and unnecessarily and excessively curtailing entrepreneurial freedoms and personal responsibility. We are going to change that now. Security and predictability take precedence over excessive regulation and misplaced perfection. We must reduce bureaucracy substantially in Europe. The single market was once created to form the most competitive economic area in the world, but instead we have become the world champion of over-regulation. That has to end.
It really sounds like Europe's going to get its act together. I think the whole Greenland thing, even though obviously it's a bit of chaos, it's very silly. It didn't end up with Trump getting Greenland, but it's really sort of slapped Europe out of its stupor. That even Putin invading Ukraine, like what was it, 3 years ago? It's getting on.
Yeah, 22.
4 years ago.
4 years.
Yeah, it's crazy. That didn't work. That's we're still like, oh yeah, by 2057 we're gonna spend £7 more on tanks. It didn't work. I think the Greenland threat has really woken Europe up that we need to stop being this mushy welfare state and get back to being militarily strong, maybe even build an empire again.
I just can't figure out if Donald Trump knows what he's doing or doesn't know what he's doing. But inadvertently, nearly every time he has a crazy spell, something good comes from it. And I don't know if it's because I'm looking. So I'm looking for that. But it does. I mean, I remember, like it was last week when he said, I'm just going to invade Greenland. See you later. 10% for you, 10% for you. And we're all going, oh, bloody hell, I can't support this, but I support Trump. And I remember just sort of right-wingers, these sort of chilled out right-wingers on Twitter, just sort of sitting back in my comments with a cigar going, it's not what he wants, Paul. What he wants is for Europe to up their defence budgets. And that's exactly what's happened. You get the German Chancellor coming out saying, by the way, you might not like it, but Donald Trump was right on a number of things. And they're all doing it. They're all rallying around. Even the ones publicly going, oh, we don't believe in this. This is wrong. This is wrong. They're all privately going, do you know what, though? He's got a point. And if we don't keep him on board, we're in trouble. Yeah. So he is righting a lot of wrongs, but doing it in a way which, well, we've never seen it before. It's like mad uncle stuff, isn't it? That mad uncle's lost a thumb, and he comes around every now and again because your mum won't let your dad's brother hang out too much with you, but he's allowed on special occasions. And then he opens his mouth and he says all the sort of stuff that Trump would say. And it is working. I mean, I don't know, because I still feel like I'm in a bit of a bubble. I don't know what this Davos thing looks like from a BBC or Sky News perspective, because I haven't watched it. I only know what it looks like from our perspective. And everybody, it seems to me, is kind of looking at this and going, this gathering in Davos is now basically over.
Mood in Davos is kind of grim and depressed, but that's a good thing. These are the people who, previously in the decades up till now have been using Davos as a way to basically want to control their citizens. They want to, bring through whatever ID, whatever surveillance to turn Europe into this panopticon, but only for, European citizens. Obviously, anybody who's brought in from outside can act with absolute abandon and, behave how they want, and they'll be, rewarded at all points. They've wanted pro-open borders, pro-mass immigration, maybe not pro-mass immigration, but basically rules. They always talk about controlling the borders, but they don't actually institute the tough things that would actually control the borders. And they've been pushing net zero and stuff like that. And the thing with net zero, like when Friedrich Merz talks about Europe being overregulated, net zero could be an incredible thing for us. It could be something that really pushes our economy forward. If you look at China, their investment in solar panels, they've leapt ahead of Europe because they can just do it. They don't have to sign off. When they build something, when China builds a bridge, they can just build it. They don't need to spend literally 22 years signing off long-winded 300-page reports on bat colonies and stuff like that. They just do it, and they'll build it with slave labor. 250 Uyghurs die building it, but it gets done. You know what I mean? It gets built. Whereas
we could have our own Uyghurs here, couldn't we? Really, we could.
We've already got them.
I mean, China can do it. They own the whole of their supply chain as well. They own all the materials in their supply chain. They own all the companies within their supply chain. And this is where democracy falls over. This is where this sort of Western capitalist democracy falls over slightly. I mean, I'm all for it.
I think Western democracy could be doing that, and I think it's great that Friedrich Merz wants to do that. And maybe the pressures of Trump on one side and Putin on the other will actually force. Necessity is the mother of invention. It'll actually force Europe to slash its pointless, stagnant regulations that a lot of times are just a sort of job creation system for bureaucrats. For the pals in the bureaucracy. It's almost like the mafia creating roles to siphon money out of a system. I really think they could slash it and make Europe super competitive again. Because if you look at Germany, which is the economic powerhouse of Europe, it's productivity and output is just tanking. It's absolutely disastrous. Part of that's high energy costs because of net zero. But like I said, China is doing the net zero stuff, and it's doing it where the energy gets cheaper. China is producing solar panels and the technologies that are being exported around the world. They're installing an amount of solar panel energy, the amount of gigawatts they're installing every year is it's outstripping all projections. It's just insane. The future is solar. But for a fact that if we tried to do solar in this country, all right, maybe Britain's not the best idea, but even a sunny European country, we would find a way to make it expensive and rubbish and not work and have Ed Miliband's face on it.
Oh my God. Ed Miliband. By the way, probably still one of the favourites to replace Starmer. Probably the best positioned at the moment, whilst Burnham's not in the picture. And by the way, we won't go into this, but I read yesterday in one of the left-wing media outlets that the reason that Labour will never have Wes Streeting is because Wes Streeting is too far right for the Labour Party. It's
really?
Okay, I'm going to let them get on with it. It's absolutely mental.
Yeah, read the room, Labour.
Yeah, exactly. But look, you're right. China are doing two things. They've been doing it, actually, if you've been looking, since about the early 2000s. They've been buying up all the raw materials in the world wherever they can. I remember having a house extension, a loft extension, I think, done in about 2006 or 7.
And there's a little Chinese man. There's a little Chinese man in the loft.
It wasn't a Chinese man. It was a full-on British bulldog, and all swearing and racist. Just the way all part of the remit that I asked for. But we were talking about the price of timber, and he was saying he just noticed that the price of timber had skyrocketed because basically at that point China were buying it all up. So every piece of timber that was getting, just paying well over the odds, paying double over. If the US or the UK was saying we'll buy your timber at £1, the China was saying we'll buy it at £3.
Right.
And we're going, well, we're just going there. So they sold everything there, which put the price up here. So which gave them a monopoly over the Western economy, and still does.
Yeah.
Every big Western economy has to reach into China to be able to survive. And by the way, if you're in Europe, has to reach into Russia for its fuel. One of the reasons Brexit's failed is and people see that things cost too much, is not because of Brexit. It's because we have the highest fuel costs in the world.
Yeah.
So most of manufacturing or food production relies on energy costs. If they're through the roof, you are paying massive amounts. And the reason it is because we're thick. We've sold it all away. We've sold our sovereignty away.
Yeah.
We didn't even take control of our borders, and now we can't afford to do anything.
Yeah, and even when we've got successful energy companies in this country, like Harbour Energy, based in Aberdeen, incredible global success story. They produce oil and gas all around the world, and they produce it from expired wells. So they're kind of like the sort of the recycling of they're almost clearing out this oil that has just been left under the ground. They're doing great work, great British success story. They pay so much tax because there's I think it's 78% windfall tax on top of your whatever corporation tax, all the rest of it. They pay so much tax. They paid over 100% tax last year. They made $1 billion profit and ended up actually like in the red because their tax bill came in at 100. I think it was 106% effective tax rate. So they had to fire 250 staff. 250 like hardworking, British, high-skilled staff. The sort of people we need to be protecting, not firing.
And immediately dead, by the way. That industry then dies, right? If that's happening in China, that goes on to make $2 billion the next year, $3 billion the year after that.
Yeah.
And the success builds and grows. And alongside that are smaller businesses that get brought up with it and smaller businesses behind that. We just kill it. And by the way, that tax money's not going on anything useful, productive. It's not going into growing the economy. We've got a chancellor that can't count, a PM that is anti-British. We got Ed Miliband in charge of where that energy money goes, and he's an absolute zealot, a mental zealot.
Yeah,
he's serenading wind farms with a banjo, but he wouldn't know how to spend that money at all correctly. It's preposterous, and we have to almost wipe the slate clean and start again. Literally, it's gonna get a lot worse before it gets better. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Just looking at Davos as well. So Trump had some absolute, he's such a funny guy. But some of the stuff he said the Swiss would all be speaking German if it wasn't for America.
And then after the war, which we won it big. Without us, right now you'd all be speaking German and a little Japanese, perhaps.
They speak German in Switzerland. That's what they speak there. He also kept referring to Greenland as Iceland.
I know that they'd be there for us. They're not there for us on Iceland, that I can tell you. I mean, our stock market took the first dip yesterday because of Iceland. So Iceland's already cost us a lot of money. But that dip is peanuts compared to what it's gone up. And
which, I mean, it's got to be. I don't think that's a Joe Biden moment. I think that's him, deliberately just being like, "Listen, I don't care. I don't care." You know what I mean? I won't even bother to learn the name of the place I'm gonna nuke. And also, there's a really funny line where a journalist, obviously a bit nervous, asked him about him making a call, as in making a decision, and he took it or pretended to take it as in him phoning someone, and he's like, I didn't make the call.
Mr. President, the Danish foreign minister rejected your call to negotiate on Greenland. What will
I didn't call him.
No, sorry. The Danish foreign minister rejected what you said in your speech that you were hoping to negotiate.
Everything he says is so funny, but he has buried the hatchet regarding Greenland, and it's. I mean, I don't think he's actually got it anywhere, or what he originally said he wanted. If he actually wanted Greenland, if he'd have gone in, nicey and, smiling and saying, hey, let's make a deal, and appealing to the people of Greenland and saying, hey, do you want $1 million and a green card? It would have worked. It's like with, the Falklands. So there was sort of discussions around, shared sovereignty of the Falklands. And then Argentina went in, all guns blazing, literally all guns blazing.
Yes.
And, after that, we're not going to go back to the negotiating table. Now it's British. And it's the same kind of thing with Greenland. I think, Trump sometimes crashes around. I don't know if he doesn't care. If he just wants to, have fun and, create chaos and, or maybe it was a calculated call to wake Europe up. But it's certainly, I don't want to say entertaining because I know a lot of people, get upset about Greenland and stuff, but a lot of the stuff he says is funny.
It is funny. I mean, you and I are comedians, and I genuinely enjoy him from that perspective. There's nothing not from that perspective. There's nothing not to like about Donald Trump. Unfortunately, unlike you and I, when we stand on stage, we're not affecting geopolitics at all.
Yeah.
So if we say something a bit spicy, and a dark room of a few hundred people think it's funny, that's great. But afterwards, it's not on. It's not in the BBC, and we haven't changed the direction of geopolitics for the next 20 years. And I guess that's the worry with Trump. And he could have achieved a lot more. I mean, I can't figure out what he's achieved. They're sort of saying he has sovereignty over the bases that they already had ownership of. Because his argument was always, well, we can't defend Greenland because it's not our sovereignty. And now he seems to have accepted that basically that the military bases can be sovereign and therefore he can fight over those if he wants. He's achieved nothing at all, really. But other than perhaps, and I don't know if he's playing 28D chess or not. I can't figure it out anymore because he says things. And by the way, let's be charitable. The reason I think he said Iceland is he's been previously describing Greenland as a chunk of ice. So I think he slightly got confused. But it's even more of a worry if imagine if he got Greenland and gone, well, I don't want this.
You got the wrong one.
I want Reykjavik.
Yeah, Mum's been to Iceland.
Yeah, he just wants the shops.
I think he's deliberately being dismissive to Europe, and it's almost like and I really think it's like, even if it's not intended, like this whole thing of like grabbing Europe and shaking it by the lapels and saying, listen, you got to stop being a pussy. Stop being a pussy. Stop being a big, mushy, welfare, soggy arsed state. Stop dishing away your money to lazy people and stop inviting the whole world over your borders and dishing your money away to them, and stop winnowing away your hard power. Stop, like Europe's military power. I mean, to be fair, man, Poland has got a pretty substantial
They're the biggest army in Europe, huh? And they've got control of their borders. But that's just because they've got real world problems, and that's because they've got Russia on their border. They know, much like I was talking about the Baltic states earlier, these people in living history know what it's like to be occupied by an authoritarian state. And they don't want it again.
Maybe Britain's problem is that we've never had fascism, we've never had communism. So there's always been this idea in Britain. We don't even have a constitution. We just have this idea that we're gonna muddle through based on what British people think is right. But British people aren't really British people anymore. It's not like it's we're not all like Anglo-Saxon anymore.
This is an excellent point, and I think also a great point about what the Donald is doing to Europe.
Yeah.
Because whether he meant to or not, it's fantastic what he's managed to achieve in terms of making people sit up and listen and think and maybe make changes. If we are also, by the talk about Poland and the Baltic states, by the way, we border Russia because we are, I know we've got the Channel and the North Sea and the Atlantic, so we do have an advantage, and it's one of the reasons we've not been invaded for 1,000 years. But they are still our closest allies. If they all went, we would go too, inevitably. Yeah. And to justify 2 to 3% of your whole GDP on defence, with all that sitting on your neighbour's border, to me it doesn't add up. And if the US were to pull out of NATO, people have said, well, we don't need it. What does the world look like without the US? Well, what it looks like is 10 or 20% of your GDP going towards defence, because that's what you'd need to do in order to bring it back up. Because even though the US is only 12% of NATO, is 100% of the technology and the military power. So if they walk away, what are we going to rely on?
Yeah. And also, it'd be great for British culture. Like, I think if I'd gone into the army when I was a kid, done 2 years of national service or something, that would have made. I'd sit up straight. I'd probably shave. Like, I'd have a.
Imagine how right wing we'd be.
Yeah, well, I think I'd have sorted myself, instead of just being this sort of despondent, weed smoking, indigent youth. I'd have actually done something with my life. You know what I mean?
Because we did go into the arts. This is some of the irony of what we do. Yeah. I mean, we are in the arts. I mean, the arts don't want us there, but we are in the arts.
And Paul, like we've both sort of ended up in the arts as comedians, and also now, I guess, commentators of some sort. And it's it's an interesting transition to go from having proper jobs, Like I worked in consulting and IT and national security and worked for BA Systems, and you worked in IT.
I
as
did.
well.
I worked for Serco and Transport for London, big corporates. Big outsourcing corporate is Serco, and obviously Transport for London. Is a subsidiary of the government. Essentially, it's not the civil service, but it might as well be. And they report into the London Mayor, which we all love and care about.
Yeah. I worked for Transport for London as well, funnily enough. When I was a consultant, I did consulting for them, and I actually got kicked off the project because they thought I was lazy. That's like, man,
I don't know what you were. I mean, I was lazy.
Yeah,
and
that's the thing,
I
man.
kept a job for 12 years. So
how lazy have you got to be to get kicked off a public sector project? That's a real achievement. You know what I mean? But I think it's because at the time, probably the same situation as you. Like I'd started doing comedy, and I was starting to get paid gigs. And then as soon as you start getting the paid gigs, and you start even if it's jonglers at the weekends, you're getting like 200 quid on a Saturday, maybe 150 quid on a Friday, and then you're picking up some odd gigs during the week, and and also you're going out and doing the open mics and stuff all the time just to practice material and get good. So then like you're going out, you might be going to Great Yarmouth or whatever to do a gig on a Thursday for 100 quid. And you're not getting home till like 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. Then you've got to get up at 7 in the morning and go and do like project management with spreadsheets and, proper work. And it just sort of saps when you've got one of those jobs that you've really got to be really into it, and you're not really that into it to start off with. And then, you start making some money doing other stuff.
Yeah, and it's not, and the thing is, it is really difficult. And I'm someone, as we were discussing off air earlier, someone who has kept some of that real world day job type stuff going up until very, very recently. And I'm at a point now where I'm like, well, when do I need to make the leap, because it's not sustainable. I essentially have 3 main sources of income. One is old world jobs still, believe it or not. One is Epic Comedy, which is my comedy clubs. And the other is media, broadcasting, commentating. And alongside, obviously, I'm doing stand-up, but I consider that under the Epic Comedy band. But it's very, very difficult because you get used to it. One thing, the real world, the rat race is a very comfortable trap. If you're used to earning a certain amount a year, and I did earn, particularly when I was full-time, I did earn good money, particularly when I was a contract project manager, up to £100,000 a year, which is a lot of money. Yeah. And you can't replace that with the media, broadcast, comedy stuff. And even if you could make that in a year, it's short-lived. One of the advantages of the real-world job is you can see way into the future, and people will give you a mortgage, etc. And I've managed to build up a pretty comfortable existence. I've got a nice home. I live in. I talked about Waterlooville earlier. There is nice areas in. I live in a nice area of Waterlooville. I've got a nice home in Waterlooville. I shouldn't say exactly where I am, but and I won't. You won't be able to find me. There's too many asylum sneakers mooching about. But it's very, very difficult to make the jump, because if you come to it late like I did, I'm now 46, and I came to comedy in my early 30s. By that time, I'd already established myself. Yeah. I had a middle management, upper management type job, a salary of like £40,000-50,000 a year. Then, I could afford most of the things I wanted, and back then you could as well. I don't know what that's the equivalent of now, maybe £60,000 a year or whatever. But people, you got a couple that are on a combined £150,000 a year, let's say, which is still very good. That gets you nowhere now, by the way. You're still struggling. That doesn't guarantee you a holiday a year, let alone 2 holidays a year. So if you combine all of those things, and being used to one thing and having all of the trappings, literally, of the real world stuff, and then you move into this, and I don't call this real world, media commentary, but it's what I love. I'm literally doing this. Is like, when you're growing up and you think, I want to do this, I want a job being a train driver or footballer, because that is what at that point you love, trains, or you love playing football or whatever, and you think that's just what I want to do in my life. I want to get paid to do the things I love. I now got a life where most of my income, or a good part of my income, is paid for doing things I absolutely love. And making that transition is incredibly difficult. I'm sure some of our viewers and listeners, some of our followers, and thank you very much for keep following, by the way. Keep donating to Leo. Keep watching. Come to me. Because, by the way, we're not millionaires. You know, I can't speak for Leo. Maybe he is, but I'm not. I'm not a millionaire, and I've got. You know, I've still got debts to pay. I've still got a mortgage. I've still got a family to bring up.
Well, I think that's the thing with you that would have made it harder to sort of transition to doing professional clownery or shouty stuff full time, because like when I went to, I started comedy in my early 30s as well. Which is, you know, too late. I think if you start when you're 17, man, you get opportunities. Yeah. Like if I'd started when I was 17, it would have still been the 90s. There was only about 5 guys doing comedy in the country. So, you know, obviously the opportunities are going to be there. Like when I came through, man, getting into the Comedy Store was like a multi-decade struggle. You know, the spots are so spread apart that, you know, by the time you actually get there, you're sort of, it doesn't even matter anymore. And then, you know, now I've been cancelled from the Comedy Store, but like I didn't have a family when I was doing when I was a consultant, when I was working for BAE Systems. So when I was starting to struggle at work because I was getting, you know, bogged down, you know, I was doing, because I was so tired, because I was burning the candle at both ends. I was doing my day job badly and I was doing comedy badly. I thought I might as well just quit and do comedy badly. You know what I mean? But like I didn't have, like, I think if I'd had a family, because I went to buy a house and I was like, man, I'm working myself to the bone here and I can't even afford to buy a house. So I thought, well, I might as well just go and live in a squat and, like, you know, live in a warehouse and like pursue my dreams, because I'm like, whatever age I was then, 30 odd. Now that I've, you know, since lockdown, I've got a family. I don't know if I'd have made that jump, you know, with a family. I think the amount of, like, when I was single, I could easily survive off like $1,000 a month. You know what I mean? Like even in London, I could survive off, especially doing comedy, because so many times you're, you know, staying in hotels and you're getting meals and stuff like that. So, you know, a lot of that's included with sort of, you know, when you drive somewhere, they'll quite often like sit you down and be like, oh, do you want some food? Like now, like to have and it's not as if I'm the sole breadwinner. I'm not even the main breadwinner in the household. You know, in fact,
one of your children earns more than you.
Yeah, I think I'm probably like third behind my daughter when she gets her pocket money. But but like the amount of money you've got to earn, like, is exponential to you know, mad. To just keep your head above water. Like my nursery fees that I have to pay are probably more than what I was living off when I quit to do comedy full time.
Yeah, look, I'm really pleased we're having this discussion. I never talk about this publicly because I've always been under the impression you need to maintain a certain level of authenticity. People see you and they think that's all you do. So they'll see me on GB News or whatever and think, well, of course, you know, he's on telly, so he's getting paid handsomely to do that. Why would he do anything else? I wish I had his job. But behind all that is me going, you know, me driving up to London at 8 o'clock, getting home at 4 o'clock in the morning, maybe even getting up at 9 o'clock the next day to go and do some other work, and then having to manage the comedy clubs. And I've got someone who works for me on that, so I've got to make sure her wages are paid. And it never stops. And then occasionally I stop and go, well, what's coming in? And then you look at how much is coming in. I think, wow, if I'd had that in 2006, I'd have 2 houses. Luckily... I mean, luckily, I had a number of experiences growing up where I got to see a little bit of what poverty and losing jobs and having no money means to people trying to bring up a family. And for whatever reason, when I was about 20, 21, all I wanted to do was buy a house. And I was born in 79, so I actually bought my first house in 2001 as a 21-year-old. Everyone around me thought I was mental. Everyone thought I was mental, but it was the best thing I ever did because, you know, and I'm not mortgage free now, even though that was 20 odd years ago, because I've gone up the ladder and I've increased it in some ways. But that is my investment. And then that will go to my daughter and hopefully, and she's already living a life that I didn't have at her age. She's able to go and do A-levels and she's doing creative design, art and photography. If I'd said I was going to go and do that, I'd just been basically telling my family I'm delaying getting a job for 3 years. Will you support me? And they would have said no.
Yeah.
So I've sort of said to her, look, these are the things you enjoy. Go and do it for your A levels. Think about what you want to do as a degree. The idea of me going to do a degree, which I did in the end as a day release from work, but the idea of me going to do that just wasn't an option.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever worked with Bob Mills, the comedian Bob Mills. He was around in the 90s. He even had his own TV show. And
In Bed With Me Dinner.
Yeah, in bed with me. That's exactly it. And I've worked with Bob quite a few times over the years now. We had a conversation last year, actually. And he was saying to me, Paul, he looked around the lineup that we were on, and he said, every single one of you would have been smashing it in the 80s and 90s. Yeah. Absolutely smashing it. He said, there was about 20 of us.
Yeah, there was nobody. The Comedy Store put ads in like Time Out or something saying like, does anybody want to try comedy? They were that desperate for comedians. They just wanted, anybody to get in and because of that you got all these like weird and wonderful acts that then, turned into household names. And now I think, a lot of that inventiveness has gone from the circuit. But it's interesting that, when I started doing comedy around about 2009, it was, the big focus was getting a Edinburgh show together and getting spotted there, and then, getting onto the BBC. And getting onto the BBC or Channel 4 was seen as, the holy grail. Once you're there, you've made it. Millions have seen you, and you're going to be a household name. And now I think you could do Live at the Apollo and just walk down the street the next day. Nobody's going to recognize you. It's one of those things. It's just like it's become another gig, and like the viewing figures are down like 95-96% from their heyday. But also like my mate was showing me. So he's a pretty established comedian, up and coming comedian, and he was offered a Channel 4 thing, and it was for £100 plus travel. And I'm like, man, that's like a sort of, that's like headlining an open mic on a Thursday or something. That's like this. So TV has come down to the same level of just being a gig.
They would like, Bob would be like, we'd get like sometimes £1,000 a night. You'd put yourself in London because that's where the majority of the clubs were. There was only about 3 or 4 of them, but you could do an earlier late show. You could jump across London, do the same elsewhere. You could be making yourself £1,000 a night, 3 nights of the week,
and it's
in
cash.
1994. He said it was unbelievable, and he said, and then you'd get offered TV, and it'd be in the hundreds of thousands.
yeah.
And it's like, look, and he wasn't bragging. He wasn't going, oh, mate, we were brilliant. It was like, we were lucky.
Yeah.
By the way, the people like, I'm not taking anyone away from Bob. He's a great comedian. And all those people that rose to the top were great. There would have been people that you haven't heard of that didn't make the money, that weren't good enough. But the opportunity was there. And they were in the alternative scene, by the way. They were the counter culture scene. They were the woke of their day to some degree. I mean, it wasn't the same division as it is now, nowhere near, but they were saying out with the old, in with the new, and they were part of the new, and they were getting lots of opportunity. If you and I mean, like I say, I was born in 79, I'd have been 20 in 1999. If I'd started at 17, that would have been 96.
Yeah,
I was still caught the end of the heyday.
Yeah, totally. And then even after that, when Jongleurs was set up, so they had a chain of like 20 odd clubs, like 22 clubs or something, across the country, and you just book in, like your whole next year would get booked in. The weekends would just, and all this, nice, well, they weren't all nice gigs. Portsmouth Jongleurs was a nightmare. Obviously, I came in at the tail end of it, and actually they still owe me about $2,500 when they went bust. Yeah, and the guy, their finance guy went to jail for fraud. But it was there still exists.
The brand still, it was bought out. The name was bought out and still runs. But
like you say, man, it's something you do. Like when I was doing comedy, it was like I couldn't really. I could have done. I think if I'd had kids and I had to do it, I could have like knuckled down and made myself do a proper job. But comedy was the thing that felt natural to me. Like getting up and shouting just sort of came natural to me. And then moving into TV, it's funny. Like it came just at the time I sort of started a family. GB News came along, and then all of a sudden I landed myself this contract with GB News, and that lasted for like 3.5 years or something. And the thing about getting paid like a good whack of money is you sort of, like I was talking about Putin believing in his own PR. I started to believe that, of course, I'm worth this money. I'm always gonna make this. You know what? Next year, I'll probably be making 25 million. not like that, but like you start.
I know exactly what you mean.
Believe, and then the contract finishes, and it's just funny having, like, I think a lot of people who are self-employed will understand this. Like, I'm not even sure how much I earn because I've got so many different things going on that, the money comes in from. Even like I get like £100 a month from Facebook that just suddenly just started appearing. And, I've obviously filled in a form to monetize my Facebook at some point, and now it's monetized. So now I'm starting to post stuff on Facebook, and that's starting to grow. But there's always, as soon as one thing finishes, there always seems to be something that, takes over. And there's all these different streams of money. Even, not talk about streams, they're bits and bobs. But yeah, I think if you're doing something because you love it, then the money will come.
Yeah, and I think going back to the original thing we're talking about, making the leap, I think it's only when you make the leap that it will come. By the way, I should say this, and I don't want to embarrass you because you're quite shy about these things, but I owe my TV career to you. You were the person who said, I think you'd be good on GB News, and I went along and did, like you did for a lot of people, by the way, but I just got lucky and I seem to be quite good at it, and I've never looked back. But that changed my mind, actually.
That's going to be used in court sometime.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll be going down with me.
Yeah.
But, and that's, I'm very grateful for that. So thank you very much, mate. Because by the way, it's not making us millionaires either being at GB News. But what it did do is it added another stream of just about enough to keep me going, to really help me make the decision of what I wanted to do. So I sort of quit being full-time in the normal world and carried on being part-time. And now that's got to a point where, look, irrespective of whether I can afford to or not, I know that I have only so much to give. I'm a driven person. I'm quite ambitious. If I'm going to do something, I'm trying to do it to the best of my ability, and I'm going to just put my best foot forward, particularly if I enjoy it. So I know that once I finally shake off the shackles of the old world, as difficult as it's going to be living 1 month to the next, I'm going to do better as a result. Whatever happens, I'm going to do better as a result. I've already started working on my YouTube channel. That's really important now because it's you have to be able to, as you've done, you have to be able to generate your own work. You can't rely on GB News, Talk TV, whoever it might be.
Yeah, because you're sort of at the whims of the bookers. Like if a booker comes in and doesn't like you, that's it. You're out the door. I've seen it happen to other people. And I'm sure it's gonna happen to me at some point. I'm sure it's already happened. I don't even realize. In some places.
At one point, I had my headliners appearances halved overnight because of some changes, and that was a reminder to me. Also, it wasn't, and that had nothing to do with my ability. I mean, I thought it did at the time. I thought, oh, crikey, and I've been found out. Because you do live this imposter syndrome sometimes. You think to yourself, well, maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. Yeah. So, and then someone makes a decision. You think, well, there you go, that's justified that. And then something happens later on. You think, actually, no, it just happens to be one person who you are at the behest of. And that can happen at any point. So you do have to build your own output as well, as you've proven.
Yeah, and I think, I think some people are really good at networking. Like in comedy, you'd see these people, you gig with them, like Alex Edelman. I mind gigging with him, and I was like, man, this guy's dog shit. Sophie Duker, gigged with her, and I was like, whoa, she is absolutely garbage. I was like, what's she doing?
TV name now, Leo.
I was like, isn't
not
she
for
embarrassed?
A comedy.
I was like, is she doing this? Is this like a dare from a hen do or something? Is this like, she's doing it for like, you like she's going to write an article about, I tried stand-up comedy once. And I was like, this must be, I knew it wasn't her first go, but like, because she was already a bit established by then. Man, that same year, I gigged with her in Edinburgh. I think that Fringe, she won like best newcomer, or she was nominated or something. And I was like, man, this is the system. It's not about how good it's not a meritocracy anymore. But Alex Edelman as well, it's like, I don't know if he's really good at networking or what. I'm not saying he's a terrible comedian, but like I gigged with him like a few times. I was like, man, this guy's dog shit. And me and Darius are like, yeah, this guy's so dog shit. And then he goes away to America and comes back the next year, and all of a sudden he's like sweeping the boards, all the awards, getting on TV. He's banging like whoever it is, Katy Perry or someone. It's like, what's going on? Not
Well,
Katy Perry, the Canadian lassie.
Yeah, what's her name? I forget her name. Anyway, yeah, I mean, and all power to him, and all power to they're playing the system.
No
the
power
system,
to him. No power to
but
these networkers. This is the trouble with comedy.
Fuck 'em.
See, like back in the 90s, the agents, the industry used to go down to the comedy clubs and see who's funniest. They'd see who's funniest, and they're like, yeah, that guy's funny. That guy's got talent, because it is a guy. Sorry, but there might be one or two. You can have your Victoria Wood or whatever. They'd see which guy's funniest, and they'd put him on TV. You know what I mean? And now it's like the industry sits back and waits to be approached. So it's all the people who are good at like spreadsheets and networking and like, approaching and stuff. And that's something that like comedian, I never approach people and like, ask for stuff because I'd feel weird. You know what I mean? I can't network.
No,
I can have a laugh with people,
either.
but I can't like, shake hands and be obsequious and lick people's assholes. You know what I mean? Not during working hours anyway. Like,
Not for free.
It's sort of rewarding the wrong skills now. The industry rewards the sort of the spreadsheet wankers.
Yeah, the measure of success changed. What happened is they said, we need one of these to say this, and then they went out and found it.
Yeah.
Not the other way around, where they went, crikey, I've seen this guy in 3 clubs now, 3 different rooms, smashing the belly out of it. He can appeal to a lot of people. He is funny. That's not the measure of success anymore, which is your point about meritocracy. The measure of success now is, how could they appeal to the audience we're trying to cultivate? Yeah. So we want an audience that's multicultural, and we need someone to talk about multicultural issues, preferably not be sure what their gender is, think that a girl can have a willy. That would be great. They need to be of a different colour than the majority of the people, because because they've been oppressed, so they need to have one foot forward. And all of a sudden, comedy's been co-opted, and it's not about making people laugh anymore. And I've, to some degree, I was about to say I feel sorry. I don't actually feel any sorry for any of these people, and I don't really want to name them all now. But let's just Rosie Jones, for instance. I feel like she's been put in an unenviable position. I think she's been told she can do this thing, and the outcome is that she can't, but the backers won't admit it.
Oh man,
so,
yeah, it's like getting a fat lass and telling her she's a ballerina, and she she doesn't understand that she's not a ballerina, that the guy can't lift her, and it's like, so she's prancing around in her tutu, just crashing into the scenery, ruining a production of Swan Lake, and that's what I see. That's what I see when I see
I did when I was an open micer, so was Rosie Jones, and I didn't know. I mean, I was very naive as an open micer. I didn't realise that people were already on a trajectory, and I was just some working class white lad who, being funny was never going to be good enough. I just kept thinking I needed to work it. I was enjoying it. All I wanted to be was funny. Yeah. And I wanted to be like the funny people that I was working with. And I remember seeing Rosie Jones for the first time and thinking, wow, that is impressive from the perspective of, stand-up comedy is a communication game.
Yeah.
And she was making people laugh without the same ability as many other people to communicate in the same way that I could and you could. And I thought, well, that, good on her. But to be propelled to the very top of comedy and be given TV show after TV show and be put in front of people and told, this is what's funny, this is what you need to support. And then, of course, getting the inevitable backlash. She is the victim of that, by the way. She's got these... I'm sure she's paid handsomely, and she may never need to work again, and good on her. From that perspective, good on her. But there are people sat behind her that have put her on this pedestal and told her that everything that these other people are saying is wrong. And I think she's partly the victim of that as well. And you know what? I don't know how it resolves itself. All I know is ultimately the truth will out. And if you're not funny and you tell everyone you're a comedian, eventually people will go, you're not funny.
Yeah, there's nowhere to hide on stage. It's the last place you can, like, it's the ultimate meritocracy, because you're getting that real time feedback. With a play or something, like, or a piece of modern art, you can say it's good. You can pretend it's good, because who knows? I've been at plays, like, they're all bad. Like, there are no good plays, because our baseline of what's entertaining has been raised up by the Lethal Weapon films. So unless it's got car chases, shootouts, stuff like that, people jumping off things, big explosions, I'm sorry, but you can't do that on stage. So a play is never gonna reach that level. But with comedy, you can't. There's nowhere to. If Sophie Duker's up there, I've watched her clips obsessively. What's that thing? Just for Laughs in Montreal, the Canadian festival. She just 4 laughs. I don't think she even got 4 laughs. It was just 2 laughs. But yeah, just for Laughs, she did that. She tanked. Maybe I'll put a clip of it for the Patreons. Actually, maybe I shouldn't.
I don't know how she.
The thing with my patrons is they're not as nasty as me. But the thing that I love about like the fact that comedy isn't, you're saying how doing TV used to be like loads of money and now it's just another gig. You know what I mean? Man, I see comedians that I know on, the celebrity versions of The Chase or whatever. And obviously when it's the celebrity version, you got to give the money to a charity. So you got
they're giving away £1,000 in charity. You're thinking you're getting a tenth of that as your fee.
Yeah, you're getting like an appearance fee, but also I know how much debt you've got from your last Edinburgh show or whatever, and it's like you desperately need that money, and you're going to give it away to this charity that actually doesn't need the money, is overfunded because charities get too much money because all they want to do, every charity wants to do is turn everybody communist. That's the end goal of every single charity out there. So the money would be more charitable to give the money to the comedian who's doing it, but obviously they can't do that.
No, and I think it perpetuates the false perception that everybody is well off because we grew up in the 80s and 90s, and people that were on TV were getting paid lots. The advertising revenue back then was through the roof, so of course you did. It's like Premier League footballers. Premier League generates billions of pounds a week, so of course the footballers get hundreds of thousands of pounds a week. There's still massive profits being made, and that's what was happening in telly. It's very different now. I can imagine being on The Chase and giving 20 grand away to charity at the end and thinking, crikey, I could do with that. You'd set up your own charity, wouldn't you? What charity are you giving away?
Yeah. It's I'm giving it away to Paul Cox International. It's we fill in water wells in Eritrea. It's a very
which is in North London, by the way.
Yeah. We've got a lot of admin costs, so we might not get over there much, but I promise every penny is going to a good cause. But yeah, it's also funny how your baseline for success changes. Like when I started in comedy, all I wanted was to do like weekend gigs, do the clubs. When I got passed at the Comedy Store and I was in for the weekends, like headlining on a Saturday and stuff, that was it. That was I couldn't believe it. I was, and it also so it was, I think it was like 720 quid for 4 shows at the weekend, which is like that's a good chunk of money for it. And
absolutely,
man, I felt that I'd made it. Just going out at the weekend doing the just the tonics, doing all the clubs. And then, I guess one of the good things about doing more stuff is your sort of baseline for success rises. Because it's like when I was, how I misspent my youth just being a dope, smoking weed and stuff. Eventually went and worked for a .com and then went into criminal intelligence and stuff. When I got my first proper job, I think the salary was 20-something £1,000, 26
decent.
grand or something. Yeah, it was like at that time it was decent. But at that time, and that was a job for a local authority somewhere, and I was like, I've made it. I was like, I've made it. I've made it now. I was like, I can't believe I'm so blessed to have this, this middling position at a local authority. I was just like, that's it. And I remember being so elated when I got the job offer, and then then you work in that job for a little bit, and you're like, man, I guess it's good that your sort of your boundary, your baseline for success does go up.
It's really interesting. I remember, I don't know what year it would have been, maybe 2004, and I got my first job over 20 grand. I remember sat there, it was an IBM buyout. So there's this place called, I don't know if it exists anymore, a place called Xyratex, and basically it used to be IBM. The managers did a buyout because that part of the IBM business was shutting down. So they bought it. And it was just, essentially, it was testing hard drives, future hard drives, the future of storage, computer storage.
Gary Glitter?
No, we weren't. Back then, we were all very innocent. We didn't know what was going on the hard drives. We were just trying to increase the amount of storage you could put onto, a piece of hardware. I mean,
Gary Glitter appreciates that.
He was very grateful, actually. He used to get a Christmas card. Don't know what that was about. But I remember sat there with the guy, me and him got the job and going, fucking hell. We were sat in a canteen. We'd managed to find a place, this corporate place, both on about 21 grand a year, going, that we better not talk about this because we are fucking big time now. And I don't want to embarrass our friends. Our friends are carrying bricks around for 100 quid a week. Let's not mention it.
That's 100% what I was like. I mind walking at the pub being like, like Boise and Only Fools and Horses. I was like, just, like...
would everyone like a drink? I mean, just would everyone like it? It was just... but you know what? I still maintain that I was a 23-year-old guy on £20,000 odd pounds a year, and I remember thinking I had gone and got an education. By the way, I didn't just fall into it, and that was graft. That was proper graft. I didn't go to uni in the traditional way. I worked for a business, and somebody saw something about me. They thought they could help me out in life, and thank God that they did, because I don't know where I'd be now. And that's happened a couple of times over the years. There's always some, if you work hard or if you show some endeavours, there's always someone who goes, just want to give him a hand, and as long as you keep doing that, you'll be okay.
Well, that was my problem, because I never worked hard. So I just, I got fired from a succession of jobs that were minimum wage. I mean, I worked night shift in a petrol station for £3.50 an hour, and I've never eaten so many chocolate covered pretzels and consumed so much pornography. And also, I worked as a salesman for a furniture shop. I got fired for lying down on one of the beds. A customer came in and I was lying down on the bed. And I got fired. It's like I'm demonstrating the merchandise. How can you be firing me? You know what I mean?
Look how sleepy I am. Look how good this stuff is.
Yeah. Oh, it's so relaxing, this mattress. You're gonna love it. Got fired from Index, which was like, Argos.
Oh, Index.
Yeah, remember that?
Doesn't exist anymore.
I turned up stoned. And
yeah, I can't imagine you. I didn't know you then, and to me, you're a grafter. You're a proper grafter. You're always churning out content. I know you work on various other projects. I know you still tour with the comedy. I see you as just this grafter, and obviously this goes back to us talking about the things we love doing, and that's where that comes from. But I can't imagine you being this waster that just gets sacked for wanking at work.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that's changed is we've both got a fire. We've got a fire lit under us because we can see the powerless state of our country. I mean, this is this is why we do this. And it grieves me when people describe us as grifters, because it would be probably more lucrative to stay in consulting or whatever. But there's a lot. Like, every time I look at the news. And, fair enough, you can say it's a curated feed. You're just, the algorithm's giving you, what's going to make you angry. But, like, seeing all this stuff, and I'm not like, I read the Telegraph and the Economist. It's not like I'm not following Alex Jones or anything. When I see the stuff that's going on, it's like, man, what is happening to this country? And especially now I've got kids, I'm like, what sort of country are we leaving? What sort of culture are we leaving? What's going to be our what's going to be the state of the country when my daughter's like 25? Like, what's she going to be dealing with?
I don't know, and it's genuine worry, and it is the inspiration behind a lot of my hard work. Also, it's not going to be long till my daughter's 25, and I'm already thinking about her future. She's living as your daughter will. She's living a middle class existence, and she appreciates it too. One thing I've instilled in her is the appreciation of that, not in a draconian way, not keeping things from her, but just, every now and again sort of saying, because, she went to school with people that maybe didn't have the North Face jacket that she was wearing or whatever it might be. And she would make a comment about, someone made a comment about that. And I'd say, I wouldn't sit her down. I'd say, look, Soph, that's because, and they're no different to us. It's just, I've worked hard. Your mum's worked hard. And we've been able to give you a life that was certainly different from my upbringing. That's for sure. And I think it's not the goal of life. Your goal of life can be whatever you want it to be. But I think if you can set your children up for a better life than you once had, then I think you're doing well. And the thing that worries me most about that is what you were saying is, well, what does that look like? Because no matter how hard I work, how much I invest in her future, will she still be able to benefit from it? Because
Yeah.
the country's on its knees.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, on that somber yet hopeful note, Paul, thanks so much for joining me today. That was it was really interesting talking to you. And have you got anything
loved it,
to plug apart from Dixon Cox?
I'm not even going to plug Dixon Cox because 50% of that goes to dicks. So, no, I'm not. I'm joking. Please do watch that podcast. Comes out every Wednesday. But one thing I'd really love people to do, just for me, is go to @Paul Cox Comedy on YouTube. So that's @Paul Cox Comedy. I'm building my channel. I've got 7,000 subscribers at the moment, which is a small amount, but I'm very pleased with that. And I'd like to build that. And it goes into everything we were just talking about.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look after my family, and that family are white and British, and we know that's. We know. No, I'm joking. No, I am joking. By the way, a lot of this is jokes, but I'd love for you to go to @Paul Cox Comedy and support me there. Great.
Cool. Yeah, there's a link below. Anyway, thanks for listening. If you want to see more stuff like this and stand-up sets, then like and subscribe. And if you want to see me perform stand-up live, I'm doing a UK tour in April and May. If you want to see if I'm performing near you, there's a link to tickets below. And if you want to support me making these videos, you can join a growing community of legends on my Patreon and get exclusive content, stand-up sets, live streams, all kinds of nonsense from as little as £3 a month. Okay, thanks for listening. I've been Leo Kears. Bye. Bye-bye.